All right, so look, we all know how it is. You're busy, right? You want to understand these big concepts, these important ideas, but who has the time to really just slog through all the details and the jargon, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
That's exactly what we're trying to do today with Eric Ries as the lean startup. It's kind of like, um, think of it as like a cheat sheet for building something new. It doesn't have to be a business. Maybe it's just a project you're working on, a new approach to something.
Yeah, like that, a cheat sheet.
Yeah. Really, what we want to give you today is the core principles of the lean startup to help you navigate uncertainty.
And the lean startup is really all about a modern way to do that.
Yeah.
Right? It helps you adapt quickly instead of going all in on one big plan from the start.
Like the engine, the real core of this whole thing is the build, measure, learn cycle. And I mean, yeah, on the surface, that sounds really obvious, but it's the speed and the intention behind it that I think make it so powerful. You're not spending years in development. You're getting a really basic version out there fast and then seeing how people actually use it.
Right.
Then you use that data to make more informed decisions, which is, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that's really interesting about the lean startup is how much it emphasizes actually learning what customers want, not just what you think they want.
Right, yeah.
So by doing these rapid iterations, you actually are going out there and validating your assumptions in the real world. So you don't waste time building features that nobody's going to use.
Right.
It's like this constant feedback loop.
Yeah, yeah. Which, I mean, it's funny because that leads right into the minimum viable product or the MVP. And, and this doesn't mean putting out something that's broken or incomplete. It just means putting out the most basic version that delivers value, the core value.
Right.
Just enough to let you test those assumptions so you can get that feedback. Imagine, you're launching a food delivery app. Your MVP could literally just be one type of food in a very limited area.
Yeah.
Just to see if people even want to use your app to order that kind of food in that area.
Yeah, and I think that's really the main point, right? It's not about having every bell and whistle. It's really about figuring out what's essential.
Exactly.
And then going from there. And if you think about it, the grand scheme of things, the MVP is a way to kind of de-risk the whole venture.
Yeah.
Because you're going out there and you're getting feedback very early on. So you're not building this entire product based on some idea that may be totally wrong.
Right. Exactly.
And it makes your product much more customer-centric, I guess you could say.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, so let's say you're doing all that, right? You're putting things out there, but how do you actually know if you're making progress, especially in the early stages when maybe profit is, pretty far off?
Yeah, that's where innovation accounting comes in.
Yeah.
And this is a big one because it's not just about the bottom line with the innovation accounting. Traditional metrics, your profit and loss, those are actually lagging indicators. They don't really tell you the health of a new venture.
Right. Right.
What innovation accounting does is it focuses on things that you can actually use, like customer acquisition cost, churn rate, how effectively users are engaging with certain features.
Right.
These things actually tell you if you're on the right track and if you need to adjust.
So, you're building, you're putting things out there, you're tracking these specific metrics, and then you get to this point, and I think this is a huge point in the lean startup, which is you got to make a decision, pivot or persevere. You got to be agile.
Yeah.
You can't be afraid to just totally change direction if the data is telling you it's not working.
Yeah. And it's important to note that pivoting is not failing.
Right.
It's a strategic correction based on what you've learned.
Yeah.
So like imagine a company starts out selling one product, but then they learn that there's a huge demand for a service that kind of relates to that product. That's where they would pivot.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Persevering is like, okay, you're seeing good signs. We're going to keep going down this road, maybe refine it a little bit.
Yeah.
The main point is these decisions are based on evidence.
Right. Yeah. This whole approach, this philosophy, it just feels so much smarter than that old way of working where you spend all this time, all this money on a product, and then you launch it and you're like, oh, nobody even wants this.
Yeah.
This is, you're constantly learning and you're adapting along the way in small steps.
Yeah. And, if you really boil it down, lean thinking applied to startups is about minimizing waste.
Right.
Right. It's about minimizing waste of time, resources, effort.
Right.
And a big part of that is embracing uncertainty.
Yeah.
Doing small iterative experiments to figure out what is going to work.
So let's kind of recap here. What have we learned?
Yeah.
The core of it is the build, measure, learn cycle. You get that minimum viable product out there, test those assumptions early. Use innovation accounting to track real progress, not just profit. Then you make those really important pivot or persevere decisions. But we're making them based on data.
Right.
And the whole time, you're adopting that lean mindset.
Right.
You're focused on constantly learning, constantly being efficient.
And that raises a good question. Think about a new project or goal that you might have right now. How could you apply this build, measure, learn cycle to it?
Yeah.
What's the smallest experiment you could run today to figure out if your main assumption is right?
Yeah. I mean, that's something really to think about.
Yeah, that's your takeaway today.
There you go.